At 29, Daniel had nothing in his savings account. Not low, not just a few $100s, zero. Every month was a balancing act. Rent, utilities, groceries, with nothing left over for emergencies. One unplanned bill could have pushed him into debt. I've watched this pattern repeat countless times, and Daniel's situation was all too familiar. But what he did next wasn't dramatic. It wasn't flashy. It was deliberate, quiet, consistent, and over the next 12 months, it transformed his life. The story isn't about a miracle windfall or a lucky investment. It's about control, discipline, and incremental decisions that add up. Daniel worked a standard 9-to-5 job. His gross annual salary was $48,000. After taxes and deductions, he took home roughly $3,100 per month. That sounds reasonable, but expenses were nearly the same. Rent was $1,200, utilities another $300, groceries around $400, transportation $200, and miscellaneous costs eating the rest. By the end of each month, his account hovered at zero. The first step was simple: understanding the problem. He didn't try to earn more right away. He tracked every dollar for the first 2 weeks. Every coffee, subscription, or impulse purchase was noted. The numbers weren't flattering. Streaming services he barely used were charging $60 a month. Lunches bought on the go were adding up to $150 a month. Random online purchases weren't enormous individually, but combined they were significant. Daniel realized that the lack of control was the problem, not his income. Income without structure is like water without a container. It disappears. Once he had clarity, Daniel set a realistic baseline budget. Not extreme, not miserable, just structured. Dining out was reduced to once a week. Streaming subscriptions were trimmed to essentials. Impulse purchases were paused. Each month, these adjustments freed about $400 that could now go towards something meaningful. This wasn't exciting, but it was foundational. Stability wasn't glamorous. It was necessary. He also made a psychological adjustment. Money was now a tool, not a source of stress. Each saved dollar was a small victory. By the end of month 2, he had managed to save $400. A tiny amount, by some standards, but monumental for someone who had been living paycheck to paycheck. Budgeting alone wouldn't create the kind of change Daniel wanted. He needed additional income. But he didn't look for a high-risk or unrealistic shortcut. Instead, he examined skills he already possessed. He was proficient with spreadsheets, comfortable analyzing small data sets, and organized by nature. Freelancing platforms became his playground. He started offering simple services, formatting reports, cleaning data sets, and basic virtual assistants. The pay was modest at first, $10 to $15 per hour, but each completed job added experience and credibility. The first month on the platform brought in just over $400. He reinvested some in better tools, a faster laptop, cloud storage, and productivity apps. It wasn't glamorous, but efficiency mattered. By month 4, side income had grown to roughly about $100 cumulatively. The real lesson during this period wasn't the money. It was discipline compounded with opportunity. Daniel had proven to himself that income could expand, but only with consistent action. With both budgeting and side income underway, Daniel focused on reinforcing habits. He automated part of his savings. $200 from each paycheck was moved immediately into a separate account, creating a small but growing emergency fund. The remaining side income continued to improve his workflow and purchase small efficiency tools. By the 5th month, Daniel's savings reached about $2,000, enough to cover 1 month of rent if needed, a psychological relief he hadn't felt in years. His mindset began to shift. He stopped living reactively. Decisions became intentional. Every financial choice was now part of a larger plan. The final insight from these first 5 months was clear. Control, not luck, drives progress. Income mattered, but only after structure was established. By the 6th month, Daniel's routine had solidified. Budgeting was no longer a conscious effort. It was habit. Automated savings ensured $200 from each paycheck went straight into his emergency fund, untouched. Every discretionary dollar was scrutinized. He wasn't deprived. He was intentional. Side income, however, had become the key lever. Simple spreadsheet work had given way to small analytical projects, compiling reports, managing simple databases, and offering efficiency audits to small businesses. Hourly pay was now $20 to $25. Each new client added credibility, reviews, and referrals. Momentum was building quietly but steadily. By the end of month 6, side income had contributed an additional $2,500 cumulatively. Combined with savings from the baseline budget, total funds reached roughly $5,500, enough to cover nearly 2 months of living expenses, a comfort Daniel hadn't imagined 6 months earlier. With initial success visible, Daniel began focusing on efficiency. Instead of working longer hours blindly, he streamlined tasks, created templates, and prioritized higher-paying clients. He understood that time was finite, but value could scale with smart effort. At the same time, he maintained discipline on personal expenses. Eating out remained limited, subscriptions stayed essential only, and every discretionary purchase had to justify itself. Many would have thought that extra earnings meant lifestyle upgrades, but Daniel resisted. He saw the money as a foundation, not a reward. By month 7, his cumulative side income contribution reached around $4,500. Savings in the main account grew to approximately $7,000. Psychological changes were more noticeable than the dollars themselves. The sense of security, even modest, allowed Daniel to make deliberate choices rather than reactive ones. It wasn't just money that changed. Daniel's confidence in handling finances had grown. For the first time, he could predict outcomes, side projects, expenses, and savings trajectories. Decisions no longer caused stress. They became strategic. He also began small experiments with extra efficiency tools. Cloud storage upgrades, workflow automation, and project management software allowed him to increase output without increasing hours. Side income began growing faster, $1,200 this month alone. By month 8, total cumulative savings, $8,700. The key insight: small consistent improvements compound over time. Incremental gains now outpace the initial slow start. Momentum was no longer just financial. It was behavioral. Month 9 marked a critical psychological milestone. Daniel's savings crossed the $10,000 mark cumulatively, combining disciplined budgeting and side income. It was tangible proof that his methods worked. He could now handle unexpected expenses without panic. One car repair or medical bill wouldn't immediately destabilize his finances. He had built a buffer. More importantly, This buffer wasn't the result of a sudden windfall or risky investment. It was earned through intentional choices, structure, and consistent effort. The pattern was clear. Income alone doesn't solve money problems. Discipline and strategic action do. By this stage, Daniel's mindset had shifted completely. Money was now a tool, not a source of anxiety. Saving was habitual, not forced. Side income was sustainable, not opportunistic. Confidence replaced fear in every decision. Tier 1 middle-class viewers can relate. You don't need $1 million to feel financial security. Even $10,000 properly managed can change the way you live, think, and plan. By month 10, Daniel's financial habits were second nature. Budgeting was automatic, savings were automated, and side income had become a regular source of stability. But he didn't stop at consistency. Now he looked for efficiency and strategic opportunities. He began negotiating slightly higher rates with existing clients and selectively taking on new projects that paid better per hour. Output remained manageable. The goal was maximize value, not hours. With discipline and smarter work choices, side income for this month contributed roughly $1,500. Combined with his primary salary savings, his cumulative total reached approximately $13,800. Daniel noticed a subtle but powerful psychological change. Money was no longer stressful. It was predictable. He could plan ahead, consider contingencies, and feel confident about the next steps. Month 11 focused on refinement. Daniel reviewed his system. Monthly expenses remained controlled. Side income continued with moderate growth. Savings automated fully into a separate account. Small investments in productivity tools maximized output. He maintained his discipline, avoiding lifestyle inflation. Many people in similar situations fall into the trap of spending extra income as soon as it comes. But Daniel's focus was long-term stability. By the end of month 11, his cumulative savings reached roughly $16,900. For the first time in years, he felt a genuine sense of financial security, enough to cover multiple months of living expenses if needed. The final month was both culmination and confirmation. Daniel continued side income, slightly higher paying projects, now fully optimized. His primary salary and strict budgeting kept the foundation strong. By the 12th month, total savings crossed $18,300. Not a fortune, not a flashy investment win, but a tangible, real-world transformation, a safety net, confidence, and control over his life. This wasn't luck. It wasn't a miracle. It was the result of 12 months of consistent, deliberate action. Small wins repeated every week, compounded into a life-changing total. Looking back, the lessons are clear. Control matters more than income, structure before growth. Consistency compounds. Small, regular actions beat sporadic effort. Side income amplifies impact. Skill-based work adds leverage without excessive risk. Psychological transformation is as important as financial. Security breeds confidence. Tier 1 middle-class viewers will recognize this pattern. You don't need a huge salary to create meaningful change. Discipline, focus, and smart action produce results you can see and feel. I've witnessed countless financial journeys over decades. Some fail, some succeed, and some, like Daniel's, succeed quietly but powerfully. A year ago, he had zero. 12 months later, he had $18,300 in savings, a system he could rely on, and confidence he hadn't known before. Money alone isn't transformation. Decisions, habits, and deliberate effort create real change. That is the story most people overlook, but it's the one that lasts.